I am feeling rather conflicted about a decision I have made regarding my family, so I would like to know everyone's opinion on whether I am right or wrong about this. To start with, my life turned upside down 4 weeks ago when my husband, Dave, suddenly announced one evening that he was leaving me and our daughter. This announcement came out of nowhere and nothing could have prepared me for that moment. I was completely blindsided and lost. You see, Dave was the love of my life. I had always been gaga over him since the first day I had met him at a friend's party. He was 100% my type. We eventually became friends and then started dating when we realized that our attraction was mutual. Getting into a relationship with him was easy, but the only thing that was missing from our relationship was sex. Right from the beginning, Dave had a laid-back approach when it came to intimacy, and would hardly initiate romance in any way. I was less experienced than him, so this nonchalant attitude of his would make me question if he even found me attractive at all. Each time, he would assure me that he did, but would then come up with excuses like he was too tired after work. What really bugged me was that he would eye other women when we were out in public, so this wasn't like he wasn't attracted to women. Our physical connection was infrequent, happening maybe every 6 weeks, turning our relationship into more of a close friendship with occasional romantic moments. Though the scarcity did leave me wanting more, I held my tongue due to my love for him and my fear of making him feel uneasy by discussing this again and again. I convinced myself that with his experience, he would take the lead if he wanted more intimacy, so I decided to accept our situation as it was. It's important to note that Dave suffered from depression after his dad passed away when he was in college, so he was on medication which might have been resulting in his low libido, or so I thought. Unlike our physical connection, Dave heavily relied on me emotionally. He was an introvert and never really shared a lot of personal things about his life with his friends, but when I came into his life, this changed. He started opening up to me about his childhood, his dad, and the family. I was happy to support him and be there for him in whatever way that I could. When I met his mother, Martha, for the first time, she was quick to notice this and gushed to me later how it had been years since she had seen her son so happy. Although we had a great 4 years of dating before he finally proposed to me, we did have a few hiccups where I'd caught him texting other women sometimes. The incident that stands out is when I once caught him talking to his ex-girlfriend about us during the initial months of our dating. His ex-girlfriend, Sonia, had been caught cheating on Dave with his friend Faz. Dave had left her despite her apologies, but Sonia would still try to get back together with him. I remember how she would text him a lot in the initial days of our flirting, and Dave would tell me that it was his ex's turn to grovel and that he would never ever be with a cheater like her. This is why it shocked me when I went through their chats and saw that he had been complaining about me, my job, my weight, my looks, and my cooking, among other things, to Sonia. Sonia had of course initiated all the conversations by telling him how she was better looking than me, but Dave, instead of defending me and blocking her, had kind of agreed to her. He had written long paragraphs about how I was definitely not his type and how he preferred women like Sonia, but since Sonia cheated on him, he had decided to settle with someone like me. Sonia had used derogatory comments about my belly, double chin, and back by using words like how I looked like a penguin. As you can imagine, I was utterly shocked and disgusted reading their chats. To clarify, I am not and I have never been overweight. I go for yearly visits to the doctor and work out whenever I can. It's true I was not overly fit like his ex, who used to play volleyball for her college, but there was no reason for them to talk about me this way. Their entire interaction wasn't flirty in any way, but all they talked about was me and how much they both disliked my looks. There was even a picture of me in a dress which I had worn for a friend's wedding, and Dave had sent it to my ex saying, "You would look much better than her in this dress," and she had gleefully agreed. I was at a loss for words and broke down crying. That night when Dave returned home, I confronted him about the chats and his face went white as a sheet. He immediately went down on his knees and apologized for how wrong he was to do this. I told him while crying that he could have just talked to me about this if he wasn't attracted to me, and we could have broken up without any drama, but Dave started pleading, saying how he loves me from my heart and that he couldn't survive without me. He continued to tell me how even though I was not his ideal type when it came to looks, I was still the person he wanted to be with. I was ready to leave that night, but his crying and groveling changed my mind. I hate how much I used to love him because, despite all these clear red flags, I thought this man would eventually change to appreciate me for who I am. After this conversation, I asked Dave to block his ex and he agreed, promising me that he would never talk to her again. This, coupled with a few other minor incidents, like when I found him chatting with random women on dating apps in the second year of our relationship, and he quickly apologized and deleted the apps, were the only ever hiccup in our dating life. In the months leading up to Dave proposing to me, he seemed to have changed and we were the happiest, which is why I didn't think twice before saying yes to him. Since our marriage, we seemed to have had a better and more fulfilling relationship. We were consistently intimate with each other and he would tell me every day how much he loved me. We loved cuddling and watching movies or sleeping together on the weekends. Eventually, I got pregnant with Cece. Initially, Dave wasn't happy about the pregnancy since he was scared about our finances and was worried if we would be able to afford living with a baby, but I reassured him that I would get back to my job after my childhood so we could still afford our lifestyle. Dave's mother and my parents were there for us after I gave birth to Cece and have been a huge help when it comes to babysitting on the days the both of us have to work. Although Dave hasn't always been a present father and hardly helps out with her, I have never once pressured him into thinking he would eventually come around. The only good thing about him was that he would help me out with chores around the house even if he had a tiring day at work, unlike other husbands that I have heard of from my friends, which is why I never for once imagined that the day would come when he would want to leave me and Cece. Dave had been acting distant and strange for weeks leading up to the revelation, but I had brushed it off as work-related stress. We had been together for a long time and had stuck by each other through thick and thin, so I thought he would eventually get better, but 4 weeks ago, Dave finally confessed that he couldn't live with us anymore and wanted to go away somewhere far to find himself. At first, I thought he was joking because this couldn't seriously be something a sane married man would say to their family with a newborn baby, but Dave continued to say how living with us was making him question the meaning and purpose of his life and how he was done with this charade. Every word he spoke cut through me like a knife, and I felt a mixture of anger and despair swirling in my stomach. He continued to reassure me that he still loved us, but he couldn't deny what he was feeling any longer, and that if he continued to live with us then he would just get more and more frustrated every day. I asked him point blank if he had been taking his medications on time, and he got very angry hearing that, since I thought this was a result of his depression. If this had been the case, then we could have gone for counseling to help him feel better, but Dave started shouting at me about how I and Cece were the cause of his depression and how living with us had made him hate his life. I froze hearing the hate and disgust in his words. Out of nowhere, he started accusing me of baby trapping him, which was absolutely ridiculous because he didn't pay a single cent for Cece. I earned significantly more than him and paid almost 80% of our bills, including taking care of Cece, since he had a minimum wage job. How could I baby trap him when he didn't have any money, to begin with? When I pointed this out, Dave said how he thought having a daughter would fix his life, but he has since realized that he didn't want this life anymore. I was overwhelmed by a whirlwind of emotions, unable to make sense of what was happening, and it felt like the walls of our home were closing in on me. My voice quivered as I asked him directly if he was planning on leaving me to take care of our daughter, and he nodded slowly, saying how I'm the mother, so Cece should be my responsibility. I sat there in shock as he continued to say how, although he didn't expect me to understand, he needed to do this for himself. He had given it a lot of thought, and he was going to start a new life far away from us where he could be himself. The world came crashing down around me. I just couldn't believe that my husband was leaving me and our infant child. My first instinct was to scream, to plead, to do anything to make him stay. But I looked at his face, and I knew that he had already made his choice, and there was no turning back. That night he didn't even sleep next to me in bed and went downstairs to sleep on the sofa. This was the first time we had slept apart from each other, so I knew that he was serious and had given this a lot of thought. Dave moved out the following week, leaving me to explain to everyone that Dave had left us. When I first told my family about Dave, they had the same reaction as me. They just couldn't understand why on earth my husband and boyfriend of so many years would do something like this. My parents immediately wanted me to pursue this legally, but at that point in my life, I felt numb and shattered, so I needed some time to let this sink in. Dave's mother was utterly broken when I gave her the news. She called him multiple times, pleading with him to return to us, but he told her the same story about how he needed to find himself. Everyone was quite worried about him since they all thought this was a result of his depression, but the way he was behaving seemed like he had given this a lot of thought. 2 days after Dave had left, I discovered that he had also emptied our entire savings account while I was out grocery shopping for the house, and our card declined. I was shocked, and when I went to check my balance I discovered that the account had been wiped clean. My first thought was that someone had hacked into our account, but later I discovered that it was Dave who had taken out all the money. This joint account had money that I earned as well, and Dave had taken out everything without even discussing it with me. I was furious and shocked. I had to call my parents for help, and thankfully, my dad came to my rescue. He then drove me back to my place while I was worried sick about how I would be paying the rent that month and taking care of other bills. This is when my dad made me sit down and told me very seriously that I needed to move on from Dave and look at the reality of the situation. He pointed out how my husband had knowingly wiped the account clean without discussing it with me and left me and my child to starve. Watching Cece look at me with her beautiful blue eyes is when the fog slowly started lifting from my eyes. I finally understood what Dave had done to us. Had it not been for my dad, my child would not even have clean diapers to wear or food to eat. For the first time in my life, I had someone other than me to think about, and my dad was right. Cece deserved better than this. I made up my mind that I would be visiting the lawyer's office with my dad the very next day so I could start the divorce procedure. My parents, who I will always be thankful for, offered to let me move in with them and stay in their basement so I could have some privacy while taking care of Cece and also get my life in order. I couldn't believe it, but at the age of 32, I had zero money left and a child to take care of, thanks to my poor judgment of choosing a pathetic man like Dave. As you can imagine, I wanted to mentally break down, but for Cece, I tried to keep it together. I had never reached rock bottom this way and felt lost. I had to take a few days off from work so I could shift to my parents' place and get everything in order. Eventually, days passed and my family and friends rallied around us, offering me support and a shoulder to lean on. My parents would babysit Cece whenever they could, and Dave's mother, Martha, would come to visit. Once my lawyer had drafted the divorce papers, I wanted to mail the divorce papers to Dave, but he seemed to have changed his number and I had no idea how to get in touch with him. Hence I decided to talk to Martha and ask her if she knew where her son was. Martha broke down when she found out that I was divorcing Dave. She started to tell me how she had never imagined that this day would come and begged me to reconsider, but my parents backed my decision. I reassured Martha that she would always have a place in Cece's life regardless of my divorce and asked her to inform Dave about this. I wanted to get done with this divorce since all the papers and custody agreement had been prepared and we could then move on from all this. Martha, still weeping begrudgingly, agreed to pass on the message to Dave. Last week, I received a call from an unknown number. I was at work so I ignored the call, but in the evening I received a call from the same number again. This time I picked up and to my surprise, it was Dave on the other end of the line. He tentatively told me hello while I was speechless to hear his voice after 4 weeks. He hesitated before telling me that Martha had talked with him about my decision and that he wanted to meet me urgently to discuss a few things. I firmly told him that anything he wanted to discuss, he could talk to my lawyer, but Dave started pleading that he just had to see me. I was confused, so I asked him to clarify, but Dave was being very dodgy. He kept repeating how we needed to have this conversation and that it was really important. His repeated pleas were difficult to ignore, so I took a moment to gather my thoughts and finally agreed to meet with him alone, albeit cautiously. The rendezvous was set, and we decided to meet at a cafe near my parents' place. As I hung up the call, a whirlwind of questions and uncertainties filled my mind, leaving me anxious about meeting him. I decided not to tell my parents anything until after I met him to see what the discussion he kept talking about was. I knew my dad would literally murder Dave if he got his hands on him. On the day of our meeting, I arrived early, nervously sipping my coffee as I waited for Dave. It wasn't long before he walked in, approaching me with a mix of hesitation and determination. I couldn't believe how in just 4 weeks, this man had gone from the love of my life to someone I felt disgusted towards when looking at him. I didn't want to entertain him, so I kept quiet when he tried to awkwardly ask how I was doing or if Cece was doing well. Eventually, Dave gathered his courage and told me how Martha had informed him of my decision to divorce him, which had shocked him completely. He told me that finally hearing the word divorce had made him realize what exactly he had done and he didn't want to lose me and Cece. I stared at him blankly as he kept speaking all those empty words which I would have readily believed a few weeks ago, but now I knew much better. Dave then dropped a bombshell. He proposed that he wanted to come back to us and wanted me to forgive him. He said how things hadn't gone down the drain yet, so I could still forgive and forget about all of this so he could move back and we would continue to live our normal lives. I stared at him in disbelief as he told me that he had realized that this was the life he wanted and couldn't imagine a life without us. I took a few moments to gather my thoughts. Although I did want my child to have her father in her life, I knew that Dave and I could never go back to who we were. I also knew that if Dave had really cared for us, then he would not have emptied our joint account and left me and Cece to starve. What he had done was unforgivable to me and I could never forget it. As much as the idea of getting back as a family appealed to me, I couldn't ignore the pain and anger that had built up from his abandonment. So, I firmly told him that while I appreciated the offer, I just couldn't forget how he had selfishly decided to leave me and our baby to fend for ourselves. I told him that I was living at my parents' place and they were much more of a parent figure to Cece than Dave ever was. I reminded him how he had accused me of baby trapping him, so he couldn't just waltz back into our lives because there was no guarantee that he wouldn't pull this shit again in the future. I wanted to protect Cece so she could have a stable family to rely on. I reminded him how he was selfish enough to wipe our joint account clean while leaving me all alone to take care of our infant daughter, to which Dave tried to clarify how he knew my parents would take care of him and that he needed to clear his head. I scoffed at his audacity and told him that I would never be coming back to him. Dave kept pleading with me to reconsider, his eyes filled with desperation, but I knew that if I allowed him back into our lives, I would be taking a huge gamble and I didn't want that anymore. My heart ached a bit at the thought of rejecting his offer, but I couldn't overlook the permanent emotional scars he had left behind. I walked out of the cafe thinking this would be the last time I had to hear of this. Unfortunately, since my meeting with Dave, Martha has been trying to make me reconsider my decision. She keeps saying how I should think about Cece and that my daughter would want to live with both her parents. She keeps arguing that Dave made a mistake and that as his wife I should forgive him. She clearly thinks I am being selfish and wants me to put my child's comfort above my heartbreak. However, I am adamant about not giving Dave another chance. Due to her words, I have been questioning my own judgment, torn between the potential benefits of accepting Dave's offer and the memories of his abandonment. So Reddit, am I the a-hole for rejecting Dave's offer and possibly keeping Cece from having a whole family? Should I forgive Dave and get back together with him? Update 1. In just a few days, I have received thousands of comments and messages from people. I am glad that a majority of you don't think I am the a-hole. I listened to everyone's advice and decided to first talk to my parents regarding this. They were shocked to hear that Dave had gotten back in touch with me, and my mother was furious that I went to meet him all on my own. My dad told me how Dave's constant changing of mind was really worrisome and this could be a mental health issue, just like a lot of people have been commenting, so I should not be meeting him all alone. I agreed and told my parents of my decision to not let Dave back into our lives. My parents heaved a sigh of relief and told me that this was the right decision and that I should continue to focus on my divorce. Following this, I plan on talking to my lawyer about the next course of action so we can speed up the divorce process. I know there will be people who will think that I should forgive Dave, but this is no longer about me. My daughter deserves to have a more loving parent, and clearly, Dave doesn't love us, so he doesn't deserve to have a second chance. Also, there are a few people who seem to think that Dave might have left me for another woman and it couldn't have been just his mental health issue. Well, to be honest, I really don't care what his reason was. He abandoned us and left me to pick up the pieces regardless of why he chose to do what he did. Update 2. The divorce papers have been served to Dave, who is apparently living with his mother currently. Since then, his relentless calls have become increasingly desperate over the past few weeks, and no matter how much I explain to him that I do not want him back, he keeps calling. As a non-confrontational person, I feel cornered and emotionally drained by his constant attempts to reach me. Martha has also been sending me messages about forgiveness and the sacrifices of being a good mother. My dad decided to take matters into his own hands and went to pay Dave a visit. He firmly told Dave that he was lucky that there were laws in our country, otherwise he would have buried him alive after what he did to me and his granddaughter. My dad is a buff, military guy, so I can only imagine how scared Dave must have been after their talk. My dad warned him to not contact me unnecessarily and that he could communicate through his lawyers only. Martha tried to make my dad see how forgiving Dave would be best for everyone, but Dave retorted that she should have raised a better son who should have never walked out of his family in the first place. Martha argued that Dave was going through something mentally, but my dad pointed out how he had blamed me and Cece for walking out, so she should be blaming her son for all this and not asking me to forgive him. Her texts also stopped after this. Meanwhile, despite all this, I am trying my best to not lose my focus on my work and perform well. I don't want to lose out on my job since I am saving up money to eventually move out on my own. My parents have been more than helpful and I am grateful for them every day. I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have the support of such loving parents. I have blocked Dave for now, so he can't disturb me anymore. I plan to see him directly during our divorce proceedings. Update 3. It's been 2 months since my last update, and I can finally give an update. Our divorce is proceeding as updated earlier, and Dave has been fighting tooth and nail to make this as hard for me as possible. He clearly just wants to drag it out. Since we both own nothing, there is no property to split, and I do not want anything from him in alimony. But his lawyer has been demanding equal co-parent rights when it comes to Cece, which is absolutely ridiculous because I do not want my daughter to be anywhere with an unstable person like him. To protect my daughter, my lawyer then had to tell the court about Dave's mental health issues over the years, which I would have otherwise not liked to discuss, and how he abandoned us out of nowhere by taking all the money from our joint account and blaming me for baby trapping him despite me earning more than him. I am hoping that the court realizes how unreliable he is and doesn't grant him custody, because there is no guarantee of what he can do to Cece with how his mind works if she is left with him all alone. Dave's mother, Martha, comes to all our court proceedings and looks at me with disdain, but I neither acknowledge her nor do I care any longer about how she feels. I would have accepted her having a relationship with my daughter had she not decided to blame me and coerce me into forgiving her pathetic son. I will do what is best for my child. She has tried to talk to me several times after our court sessions, but my dad always quickly whisks me away from her. I know that it's going to take a while before I am freed of Dave legally, but in the meantime, I have decided to take some time off so I can take my parents and Cece to Napa Valley. My parents had always wanted to go there, and I feel like we all need a break from this ongoing drama. I want to create beautiful, joyous memories with my family despite what we are all going through. I know as long as we have each other, we can face whatever the future holds with strength and resilience. Update 4. Since my last update 5 months ago, I have some happy and exciting news to share. First of all, I was recently promoted at work, and it feels like a huge accomplishment since I now have better pay and can finally earn a comfortable income that would allow me to move out and live comfortably on my own with Cece. Although my parents don't want me to go, since they have become extremely close with Cece, I feel like this is a necessary step to find my own independence, and they understand. The promotion did not just bring financial security but also the satisfaction of knowing that my hard work and dedication had finally paid off in the end. Secondly, I am finally divorced. Thanks to my lawyer who fought for me every day for the last few months, I am finally free from Dave and his mother. They did try to make my life hell, but in the end, the judge saw that Dave wasn't a fit parent. They have ordered Dave to pay child support every month and go for mandatory therapy sessions where he will be monitored. If the results are positive, then he may reappeal the decision of his parenting rights if he wants to. I doubt that he will go through all this again, but in case if he ever decides to do that, then I am ready to fight him again. My family and friends have stood by my side throughout all this, providing me support in any way that they can. Now that I am earning more than enough, I plan on going to therapy. I understand that I might have abandonment issues, so these therapy classes will help me better process my emotions and work through any lingering issues so I can be a better parent to Cece. I have been researching therapists with expertise and have found a compassionate and experienced therapist who specializes in helping families navigate such complex emotions. Despite the challenges and emotional turmoil we have faced, my family and I are going to be okay. This chapter is far from over, but I am going to be writing my own story from now on, and I am determined to ensure it's one filled with love, trust, and growth with my daughter.